Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Ashutosh Kumar. I am a professor of political science in Punjab University, Chandigarh. As you know, EPG Pathshala, political science, under this program, we prepare the modules which would be helpful for the students of postgraduate at the postgraduate level in the university system of India. So in this module, what we are going to discuss is that what are the overall institutional arrangement of the government of India for the religious and linguistic minorities. How does the Constitution of India refer to the minorities in India, and what are the specific constitutional and statutory bodies which have been set up in order to look into the issues that concern the minorities in India, and also what are the constitutional safeguards and the constitutional bodies which have been set up to protect the interest of the minorities, to accommodate their aspirations, to accommodate their differences, and also to provide them a kind of opportunity structures, and to enable the government to work for the betterment of welfare of the minorities in India. So in this regard, we would be referring to the affirmative action, we would be referring to the idea of social inclusion, like the social and economic democracy in India, and the constitutional provisions and the national commissions. Constitution makers, when they thought about India's democracy, when they prepared the constitutional framework, they not only thought in terms of political democracy, they also thought in terms of having a social democracy. They also were keenly aware that our social system, our social fabric was not really truly democratic because of the prevalence of the caste-based prejudices and caste-based inequalities, and a kind of a structural system, a structural form of discrimination, because caste was not merely a kind of a social category, it was also an economic category. It was not merely a group, it was also an ideology. So those factors were there, that there was a challenge that how to make India's democracy a successful democracy in a very what can one say, not really very conducive social context. And it was pointed out by Ambedkar also, speaking in the Constituent Assembly. Ambedkar had pointed out that in democracy we believe in one person, one value, but the Indian social system was such that there was always a kind of a top-down authority structure, and there was never a sense of equality, because the hierarchy was very well entrenched in the Indian social order. So our constitution makers provided for, because if you see the fundamental rights provision part 3, and also you refer to part 4, dietary principles, and you also refer to the preamble, that really basically hands out the philosophical foundation, or the philosophy of the constitution, as Austin puts it. And one of the major foundational concern of the constitution makers was to bring about, in the words of Austin, social revolution, but we can say to bring about social change in India. And the social change could have been possible only when the marginal groups and many of the minorities in India have been socially and economically marginal, politically also very subservient. So how to bring about the betterment in the life of these minorities, that was always on the agenda. There was always this concern about this majoritarian democracy also, because there was always this concern in the minds of the constitution makers that if the majorities are going to be decided on the basis of a fixed identity, like say on the basis of the birth or on the basis of religion and all, this was not going to help out. So if the majorities were to be constituted on the merit of the issue, that was fine. But if the majorities were to be constituted on the basis of religion or on the basis of tribe or on the basis of caste, then the tribal communities would always suffer, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, they would always suffer, religious minorities would suffer because they won't have sufficient number to matter in political terms in an electoral democracy. They were very aware of the minority situation in India, and they were very keen the minorities should not feel that they are not being considered and they are not being recognized. Maybe this was because of the partition anxiety and the experiences of the partition when on the basis of the religion and all, the country got divided. So the constitution makers, they recognized, if you read the constitutional provisions under Article 30, the constitution recognizes the minority status on two bases, on the basis of religion and on the basis of language, linguistic identity as well as the religious identity. And there are certain provisions in the constitution, if you refer to, say, Article 25 to 30, which are basically the religious and the cultural rights, there is always this resonance that the minorities should not feel left out. Their interest, their aspirations, their values, their customs, their language, their script, they all should be safeguarded. Article 29, for example, talk about the preservation of the language and the script and the culture of all the communities, but you would agree with me that it is always the culture of the minority community, the language and the customs and the traditions and all, which are under threat because of the overwhelming influence of the majority community. So naturally, the Article 29, if you read Article 29, it is very clear that the constitution makers were thinking about the rights of, when they were saying that the rights of the citizens of the citizens to preserve their culture, language, and script, they were not only thinking about the majority community, they were basically thinking about the script, culture, and the language of the minority communities. And then educational institutions, if you see the Article 30, the right of all the religious and the linguistic minorities to establish and administer educational institutions of their own choices. And here you have Article 350A, which is a directive, but nevertheless it is a part of the Constitution, which says that it shall be the duty of the state government to provide primary education to a child belonging to a linguistic minority group. So then you have Article 350B also, which provides for an officer, a special officer for linguistic minorities, and how to ensure that rights can be protected. And even you talk about the right to religious freedom and all, Article 25. There the Sikh community right of wearing and carrying of the kirpan has been very well recognized. So it is not that the constitution makers were not clear and they were not conscious about the need to protect the interest of the minorities. Rather, when you refer to the preamble, it talks about equality as one of the foundational value of India's democracy. It talks about equality of status and equality of opportunity for all. And then you have Article 14, which talks about right to equality before law and equal protection of law. Article 15 talks about the non-discrimination on the basis of race or religion. Then you have also Article 16, which says equality of opportunity in terms of the public employment. There again, there can't be any discrimination on the basis of race or religion. And so there are so many articles in the Constitution, and the Constitution comes out very clearly, like Article 26, that every religious community has the right to manage it. Every religious denomination, members of every religious denomination, which can be sect also, members of the sect also, they have the right to manage their own affairs. So there has been secular nature of India's polity, which says that all the religions should be respected and all the religions should be protected. And if you read the articles like 343 and others, like there is a parity, like when you say 351, promotion of Hindi, it also talks about promotion of other languages, other Indian languages, and it has to be done in such a manner that the rich heritage of the ancient land of ours can be protected. So it is very clear that there is no hierarchy of the language. There is always like this, that all the Indian languages should be promoted, and there should be a special effort on the part of the state government to cater to the needs of the linguistic minority children. And then that you have the religious minority institutions, educational institutions, which are well funded by the government. In fact, in the minority institutions, they have been allowed to have the religious instructions, and their special rights have been provided. So you can say that, like you can also refer to like the Article 46, which talks about the educational and economic interest of the weaker sections of the society. This was very much the contentious point in the Champadorai Rajan case. Article 29 and 46 were read together. 29(2) says that there can't be any discrimination with regard to the admission to the educational institution, whereas Article 46 says very clearly that the state has to take special care of the educational and economic interest of the weaker sections of the society, and it mentions scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. So that way you can see that the Constitution of India, in favor of communal harmony, in favor of the social justice, in order to make the democracy all-inclusive democracy, to give them a sense of share of power, sense of betterment, and to make them equal partner in the modernization process. The Constitution not only provides the affirmative action, but also provides the policy of, prepares the ground for the policy of protective discrimination. And so Article 335 is there, which says that if the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe members are not being adequately represented in the public services, in the government services, then there should be a special provision for their entry. Article 16 also provides for reservation for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. There is also provision for bringing down the, under Article 335, bringing down the cutoff for the candidates belonging to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, to enable them to join the government services. Members of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes their interests are protected, and there are special laws, and then there are schemes, and in all the welfare schemes, special attention has been paid to the welfare of the members belonging to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. And of late, as we all know, that even the concerns of the backward caste also have been included. But we should focus on scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, because if you take them as a kind of social category, though originally they were an administrative category, they are always in minority. The scheduled tribes are hardly 7 to 8%, and the scheduled caste are 15%, or maybe slightly more than 15%. And the religious minorities are 18% of the total population of India. So overall, they may be constituting a large number, but on their own, they are in minority. And most of these minority groups, like in the field of education, employment, health facilities, the primary sector, in terms of the getting the gains of the developmental process, the religious minorities, especially the Muslims, as per the Satcher Committee report, and Rannath Mishra Committee report, and also as per the figure of the National Commission for Minorities, which comes out time and again, the Muslims are nowhere in terms of their share in the developmental process when they are compared with the majority community. In terms of education also, they are very backward. In terms of their share in the public employment, they are very less. Even in the law-making body, like the minorities representation, and I include all the other minorities also, their representation in the law-making body is very, very low. So these factors we should take into consideration when we talk about the initiatives which are being taken up by the different committees, like on the recommendation of the Satcher Committee. The then UPA government launched the 15-point program for the welfare of the minorities. There was an attempt to give them equitable share in the rural housing schemes. There was a scholarship. All those scholarships were given. The minority institutions were there. Madrasas have been funded. So lots of efforts have been done by the successive government too, and those efforts have been even continued even now. And we have a Ministry for Minority Affairs at the center. So we have this National Commission for Minorities. This act came into existence in 1992, and this National Commission for Minorities has the task to give the report to the President about the status of the minorities in India, to evaluate the progress of the development of the minorities under the Union and the states, to monitor the implementation of the policies and the safeguards, whether the policies are working on the ground for the betterment of the minorities or not, to study that whether the discrimination continues against this. And as we know that the Constitution is clear about it, the laws have been made, like Article 17 makes the untouchability a crime. Then there is a very much emphasis on not only taking affirmative actions, but also taking punitive action against those who want to continue with the age-old oppressive system of caste-based discrimination or caste-based exploitation. And the same is true for the minorities, religious minorities also, that though despite the unfortunate fact that in India the divide along the religious line, communal line, and divide along the caste line, and the atrocities against the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and also atrocities against the minorities to some extent continues to prevail in some pockets of India. But overall, there has been an attempt on the part of the both state government as well as the central government to address to the problems of the minorities, whether they are religious minorities or they are linguistic minorities, so that in India we can have society where the 18% minorities and a sizable population of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and all other kind of minorities, racial minority and all, they do not feel left out. They do not feel that the constitutional, legal and administrative modalities are not favorable to them, or there has not enough effort on the part of the government, on the part of the legal, normative, legal, constitutional framework to safeguard their interest and to provide them equal opportunity structures. So I would say that in this era of multiculturalism, now everybody talks about multiculturalism, but our constitution makers were way ahead in comparison to other countries. And India, in fact, right from the beginning, accepted diversity, unity in diversity, as Nehru used to say, diversity or multiculturalism as a basic principle of its constitutional order. And it not only provided them, as to repeat myself, it not only recognized the differences on the basis of religion or caste or language, but also provided necessary safeguard to safeguard the interest of the linguistic and religious minorities. And there lies the success of India's democracy, that despite all those diversities and all, Indian democracy has survived. It has gone from strength to strength. India has remained united despite having such a sizable minority and despite having so many languages. So unlike the Western European countries, where the countries have got divided in the name of religion or in the name of language, our countries, despite having so many languages, so many dialects, so many scripts, so many religious communities, Indian nation state has remained strong and resolute and firm, and there has not been any anxiety about our territorial unity and integrity. I would like to also hear just a few observations about this Minority Commission. You know, the Minority Commission was envisaged by the Ministry of Home Affairs way back in 1978, and it was a non-statutory body which was brought in 1974 under this Ministry of Welfare. But it was mainly in 1992, as I already told you, that the National Commission for Minorities Act was passed, passed, and in 1993 the National Commission for Minorities have been established. And under this Act 1992, the Muslims, the Christians, Sikh, Buddhist and Parsis have been notified as minority community. Over the period, even the Jains have demanded to be recognized as a minority community in India. Now I would like to refer to the fact that there has been a persistent demand, and that was reiterated even in the Sacha Committee report, that there should be reservation on the basis of religion, that there should be reservation in the government job for the religious minorities on the ground that the religious minorities are not being adequately represented in the government jobs. Now this would be like another policy of protective discrimination. See, there is a difference between protective discrimination and the affirmative policies. Affirmative policies are for all the people, so in a way it's very secular, it's non-controversial. But when you have this policy of protective discrimination, and reservation would be one example, where you reserve some seats for the minorities, and there is also talk about why can't we have a proportional representation, because as I said, that there is always a talk that the minority community members are not being adequately represented in the law-making bodies. Likewise, there is also this demand that why all states do not have the state minority commissions, because the minorities are spread out, and there are states, there are hardly any state in India where you don't have the religious minority or you do not have the linguistic minorities. And in fact now, as you can see, that from many parts of India, the demands for separate state, demand for new states are coming up, and these demands are being made by the linguistic minority groups. But even when you create a new state, there would be always a problem about in that state also, maybe the one community now would emerge as a majority community, but the other communities would be reduced to the status or would continue to remain the minority community. So this issue is very complex, and there is always a problem of the exploitation of the religious feeling, communal feeling, and communalism, as you know, is a kind of an ideology in itself, and the political parties have shown a tendency to exploit the religious sentiments for the electoral purposes. So that is one of the reasons, because these factors like the demand for reservation for the religious minorities in the government job or reservation for the religious minorities in the law-making bodies, it has been very controversial and it has raised the communal temper. Then there is also an issue about the protection of the minorities, like the debate about the tolerance and the intolerance, or the issues which have come up, for example, with regard to the ban on the cow slaughter and not hurting the feeling of the religious sentiment of the majority community. And also people have referred to Article 48 that talk about the animal rights and the killing of the milch cattle and all from all the religion. But the state should have, as Rajiv Bhargava also argues, the state should have a policy of principled distance, but at the same time, the state should also intervene, as Article 25 also says, that for the sake of public order, morality, national security, and all those factors, the state can interfere in the secular practices of the religious communities. Constitutional provisions which refer to the rights of the religious and linguistic minority, which provides for the special safeguard to protect and promote the languages and the interest of the religious community, their religious practices, their language, their culture, their script, their educational institutions, their safeguards. They all are very important, but there is a need that a state should also not only keep the distance from all the religion, but the state should have, as Rajiv Bhargava also argues, a state should have a principled policy of principled distance, but at the same time, a state should also intervene as Article 425 also says, that for the sake of public order, morality, national security, and all those factors, the state can interfere in the secular practices of the religious communities. Even on the ground, the governments have successive government at the center as well as at the state level. They have taken important measures to help out the minority communities. But in practice, on the ground, the reality is that the minorities are still, especially the Muslim community, is still very educationally backward and economically quite marginalized, even faring lesser than the scheduled caste in terms of their economic assets, in terms of their cultural endowment, cultural assets. So there is an attempt, and also the attempt to give them a sense of security, to check the communal violence. The state should come very hard on these things, and all the welfare schemes, there should be a special provision for the minorities, so that because they are so marginal, so they can also feel that we can, like the victims of the communal riots and all communal offenses, persecution hona chahiye, and then there should be out and out prevention of any kind of communal violence, and those politicians or the political parties which try to crash on the religious sentiments, they should be heavily punished.